It was 1951 that a film was made about a small town. The small Colorado town of Littleton, 10 miles south of Denver, was the setting. The 18-minute black and white film entitled Small Town Editor was produced by the US State Department. The story told was that of newspaper editor Houston Waring, his town, and his work as editor of the Littleton Independent.
There are 10,000 small-town newspapers in the United States, like this one in Littleton, Colorado. This is the press room of the Littleton Independent. The boss is Houston Waring, editor and part owner of the Independent, and his job requires many talents. Yes, if you want to run a small-town newspaper, you have to turn your hand to a multitude of jobs. So that's what Editor Waring has been doing for 25 years. The Independent is his paper, and Littleton is his hometown.
The film, translated into 20 languages and shown in over 80 countries around the world, told the story of the rural press and the people it served. When another editor, Curly Annabel, saw the film in his hometown, Bega, New South Wales, Australia, he was struck by the similarity between the two communities and his role as editor of the newspaper in Bega and that of Houston Waring's in Littleton. Curly, always a man of action, wrote a letter to House, and the two-continent friendship began.
And he, being the editor of the paper, was a prominent personality in the town. And he realised when he saw in the 1950s the movie Small Town Editor, which was made about House Waring and his Littleton Independent in Littleton, Colorado, how similar they were and how similar their jobs were, because they did practically everything in the business themselves. They were editor, copy boy, journalist, seller of advertising, and they did so much themselves, and they had so many similarities that it prompted Curly Annabel to write to House Waring in Littleton. And from that tiny little seed, that correspondence and a meeting a couple of years later, they decided how good it would be to bring the two towns together as family, and the people-to-people exchange, really at that very grassroots level of school to school, community club to community club, church to church, and some very long-standing human relationships started way back then.
They appreciated that this could be quite a worthwhile enterprise, and that it was really the sister city program that President Eisenhower started that they hooked on the end. And I think from memory, Bega and Littleton were the first towns that the USA had taken on a sister city relationship with.
Exactly.
Yeah. The editor of the paper was the voice of the district.
Very much the most important man in town and the most influential. Any public meeting in the town, and he attended it, and the council meeting. Any parliamentary figure that came to town, Curly'd be there with his notebook, and that was the same with House. They were very influential, important people in their small towns at that time.
And Curly Annabel was in a great position to publicise the sister city arrangement because he had the newspaper at his disposal. And so there was a lot about Littleton in the newspaper, and it sort of flick over some of it. Then we found that we weren't flicking over it. We were cutting pieces out and keeping them, putting them in scrapbooks.
I was 17. I'd lived in Bega all my life, and apart from holidaying, go up to Sydney, whatever, no, I hadn't been out of Bega very much at all.
Well, I was 18 and I'd been at boarding school for 2 years and teachers' college for a year.
And it happened very quickly. It happened within weeks. The school was approached about doing it, and I was the lucky person chosen.
And Del had never been on a plane before she stepped aboard the one that took us to Littleton.
Travelling with us were Jill, Mr. Annabel, and two lovely young men from Bega, Tim Collins and Colin Rogers. So we went as 5.
They were going on a world trip, as I understand it, and Mr. Annabel talked them into coming with us to Littleton as the first stage of their journey, and then breaking off and doing their own thing after that.
My mother was a very community-minded person, and Curly approached her initially and said that they needed some more younger people to join in the program, and Tim and I were mates at the time, and both Tim's parents and my parents agreed that this was a good situation for both of us to start our life out, and at that time not too many young people travelled overseas who were under 20.
And it was a lot of money at the time for the travel, because I just bought a Volkswagen car when I was 21, and it cost, from my memory, £816. You could buy the common family car at the time, a Holden or a Ford, around about £1,200–1,300. You could buy an important American car for 17 or 18, and here was a plane ticket, £2,000.
Was there a sense of isolation in the community when you were growing up?
Yes. I can always remember Mum saying, we go out west, we'd visited someone in Griffith or somewhere like that, and she said, oh, they all say down there, oh, but Bega's so far away. Really, the rest of New South Wales, we were the ones out on the limb down here.
I think you'd find that might be a once a year type situation to probably go to Sydney or Melbourne show or to visit, but people didn't leave home as often as they do now, and I suppose in those times a trip to Sydney certainly entailed an 8-hour trip in a car, and which was
8 hours.
Yeah.
And what kind of media and entertainment was there for you growing up?
The picture theatre. The King's Theatre, isn't it? Was, and still is, I think, up the front of that building I saw. Yes, that was our main source of entertainment, so America and Hollywood was a big part of our lives, really. And when we arrived in America at that stage, well, yes, it lived up to that image. That was my impression.
There wasn't a local radio program, I don't think, at that time. It might have only just started. 2BA might have only just started then, Tim.
Yeah.
I can't remember that.
Yeah. We had the country hour in Blue Hills, and we were expected, or the older members of each family in the district was expected to take over from the father and take over the positions that he held in the community. If he was on the show society, you were supposed to follow in his footsteps.
Be it show societies or be it CWA if you're a woman, or Red Cross, or junior farmers, or your church functions. Everyone went to meetings,
Right.
And that was their social time at the same time.
And they were orderly too, weren't they?
Well,
no one misbehaved at a
only on the way home.
In February of 1961, House and Irene Waring were invited to attend Bega Days. In August of that same year, Curly brought 4 Bega High School students to visit Littleton.
And I say that it was like a royal tour, and I should say in miniature, but it wasn't in miniature. It had all the trappings of a royal tour, and for the daughters of a butcher in Bega, it was quite, spectacular. We had to go to Canberra before we left and meet the American ambassador and officials from the News and Information Bureau there. We met the Lord Mayor of Sydney, and he farewelled us and presented Dell with a boomerang and told her to be like the boomerang and come back. It was quite a long trip in those days because we went to Fiji, first stopped, went to Hawaii, next stop, and then went on to San Francisco. So it was a long, drawn-out process.
I think there were sort of refuelling stops in those 707 days.
And I remember to this day, when we got about the halfway mark, everyone going and sitting down. Then everyone got up and was having a good time again, and I remember asking, what was that lull for? And they said, well, didn't you hear it? The pilot says we're going to go on. We have enough fuel. We're over the halfway mark, and we have enough fuel to go to Honolulu. Otherwise, we would have had to turn around and come back.
When we arrived in Hawaii, we were welcomed by the American State Department onto American soil. When we arrived at San Francisco, we were welcomed by the American State Department onto American mainland soil. Qantas PR man squired us around San Francisco for a day. We met the Australian Trade Commissioner in San Francisco. Mr. Annabel knew everybody everywhere. He knew all the right people, and he took us to them all.
Cole, what about at the airport? We were met by this huge crowd at Denver Airport, and we thought there was a film star or something. The flags and 2 pink Cadillacs, convertibles. Right? And we thought, we were looking around to see who was on the plane. Right? Until someone, probably House and Mrs. Waring, walked up to us and told us to hop in the back of these Cadillacs and put our feet on the pig skin seats. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we went down the street, didn't we?
They drove us from the airport down the main street in Arapahoe County on the back of these Cadillacs. The whole trip was the same. Every hour of the trip was those amazing people. And according to them, they weren't putting themselves out. Oh, no, this is normal. They put themselves out, and we very much appreciate it. Yeah.
In Colorado, we were made honorary citizens of Colorado, met the governor. The Australian ambassador in Washington at the time was Sir Howard Beale. He came to Littleton for our official welcome dinner. President Kennedy sent a message to be read at the welcome dinner. Prime Minister Robert Menzies from here sent a message to be read at our welcome dinner. They gave us bunches of flowers when we arrived, which was lovely, but they also presented each one of us with a key, a gold key that had Littleton written on it, and also the city's colours, green and white. And they presented us with the key of the city and said, these keys will open any door in Littleton.
Well, it was just as grand as Jill made it sound. With Mr. Annabel as the wonderful tour guide, he was such a fascinating man. And he was, informative in all ways. We just thought he was wonderful. He looked after us beautifully. All the things Jill said were true. We arrived in Littleton. We were feted at the local Arapahoe County Fair. And, up there in front of thousands of people, it was just amazing, introduced as these young girls from Australia.
Well, we certainly had to tidy our act up a bit. Tim and I were bits of players in the early stages.
We obtained the
letter of introductions.
The letter of introduction from the Prime Minister of our country to carry with us and use all around the world. We also had one from the Premier of the state. We
used them mainly to introduce ourselves, but it didn't work very good in the bars at night time, and they weren't that interested.
But what about the Detroit car show? And this is where all the models of all the firms, and a lot of firms in those days, had a car show to put on display their latest models for the year. So we bowled up, and there's all people going to these huge buildings like aircraft hangars. And so we got to the door, and we weren't a dealer. It was the dealer's day. And we said, but look, we're from Australia, and we have a letter of introduction. Yeah, but what have you got? And we showed them Bob Menzies' introduction, and anyway, the fellow took it inside and came back and said, mate, there's no one in this place ever heard of him or you, so you can come tomorrow with the public.
I forgot that story.
Do you remember that?
No, I didn't remember that one.
Oh, it happened.
We used it a few times where it shouldn't have been used.
Yeah.
What was your impression of the United States at that stage?
Well, we thought it was so far ahead of Australia, it wasn't funny. We went to, every house we went to had more than one car and more than one bathroom, and you'd have been lucky to find that in Bega at the time. One of the families with whom we were billeted had 3 cars, 3 cars, 3 bathrooms, swimming pool, about 5 telephones, and all the things that to us were just, pure Hollywood. And so we found the people were very much the same as we were, but their accessories and all their conveniences were obviously streets ahead of ours.
I remember getting in the car, and it was a really hot day, and it was a very large car, and I had to sit in the middle. We had 6 in the car, and I had to sit in the middle, and I got frozen to pieces because they had air conditioning. We'd never experienced air conditioning in cars at those days.
When the sister city relationship started, the towns were, particularly Littleton, was much smaller, But then in Littleton, the company called the Martin Company won the contract to build the Titan missiles for the American space program. And so, like Topsy, Littleton grew. And scientists and technicians and engineers and all those types of people who came to work in this high-powered industry built these wonderful homes and conveniences, and Littleton suddenly became very big, and Bega was very much the little sister.
To walk down the main street of Littleton in those days, in 1961, was pretty much the same in Bega. People talked to you, and it didn't look a lot different to the main street of Bega. Probably a little bit more improved than Bega at the time, but no skyscrapers, only, I think, 2-storey buildings and friendly people. It is fantastic to travel, but to go to an area the other side of the world and be able to fit in to with a collection of people as if you're at home and be welcomed, and then to do the same thing to people coming out here, know that you're going to be welcome, will also keep the interest in the exchange and keep it going as well.
It's coming from the grassroots of both towns, the raising of the money, the contributions of the people in the district, the lifelong friendship that this thing has set up has just made Bega a more worldly town than what it would have been without it.
Why is that? Why did that relationship develop?
Just personalities, in my opinion. It was the people we met. Everyone had the same frame of mind. They wanted to know people. They wanted to understand the people that lived in your town or their town. It was just an ongoing search for information and friendship. And was as Eisenhower said, it's hands across the seas, and that's what it was. Yeah.
Curly should be pleased anyway. Curly and House.
I think we're in the wonderful position of being guided by Mr. Annabel all the way. He was really amazing, and he was part of the educational experience too. He was such a good teacher, he was such a good director. He encouraged us to think about things we'd never thought about before and look at things differently. He was a wonderful man.
He's had a huge influence, hasn't he?
Very, very.
What was it about him, do you think?
He had had such experiences, I think, before he'd come to Bega, but he was also just interested in everything. He was such a vital man too. I think in fact, just said it the other day to someone, he was the first man I ever looked at and thought, I can see why young women can find older men attractive and marry them, because he was just such an interesting person. It was irrelevant how old or what age he was at any stage. I'm not saying I was interested in Mr. Annabel. What I'm saying is I could see that people could be attracted to people purely because of they're just so interesting.
He came here with so much experience, and he was a very cosmopolitan figure, and as I said, he knew everyone everywhere. He knew all the right people.
We found it a privilege to be able to join the delegation and go with them, and as the years have gone on, it certainly demonstrated a great asset to both our lives.
It was a wonderful experience, and I just think it helped me become the person I did. I was a very lucky girl.